I used to watch these kind of videos all the time when I was a pre-med applying to med school, and for some reason they always just made things more complicated than necessary. It's actually quite simple now that I've gone through it so many times and I'm in med school now looking back at it. It's quite simple to build a good application and what makes up that. So I'm going to give you guys my advice as I go through my own application that got me accepted into med school. My name's Bright. Welcome to my channel. Hit that like button if you want to help support me and if you think this video is going to be helpful for you, and subscribe for more content. I'm going to go through my entire ACOMAS application in a very succinct way, just really targeting the most important things. At the end, I'm going to go through my personal statement. I'm actually going to go through that and explain that because I think a lot of people miss that part especially. And I'm going to talk about the interview process as someone who actually has interviewed medical students to the school that I'm in as part of that committee. So I can give you guys the behind the scenes knowledge of what I look for personally when I'm interviewing future students. And I think that's going to be important. So I really recommend watching all the way through. First thing, obviously, we're going to talk about real quick, GPA, MCAT. Both those numbers should be as high as you can possibly make them to be. My GPA wasn't the highest. It was 3.54. Could have been higher. I partied a little too much in freshman, sophomore year, but I did start to make up for it in junior and senior year, as you guys will see here in my application. So before we dive deep into this application, a few things. First, you'll notice this is actually an ACOMAS DO application, not an AMCAS MD application. I do have that as well. However, I did get accepted to a DO school, and so this was like my most recent, most finalized version. I decided to give you guys the final draft, so to speak. Also, a little bit about my personal journey, and I'll explain all of my mistakes in this video so you guys don't have to repeat them, is that I actually had to go through 3 application cycles, and I had to take the MCAT twice because my first score expired. So as you guys see here in the top, my second MCAT score was a 515, and my first MCAT score was 508. So that's like a really big jump, 508 to 515. Big part of that is because the first MCAT I took was during my junior year, so I was still juggling a full load of classes in university while studying for the MCAT. I took one of those Kaplan courses. They gave me the books. I followed along online. I didn't like it that much. For my second time around, I was already kind of near the end of my master's program, and I just took those old Kaplan books and I self-studied through them on my own, and I supplemented that with UWorld questions and CARS questions that I found online on Jack's website, something along those lines, and that's it. And I just self-studied my way through it. I took about 4 months to study all the way through, did my practice exams, and ended up getting a 515 at the end of it. So there's my score, absolutely revealed in the flesh. I did get a bachelor's and a master's degree in the same university. And here are my grades. So mostly A's all the way down to B minuses and even a few C pluses. And this is what I really want to focus on here. Chemistry, C plus, my first Gen Chem, okay? Gen Chem 2 right here, also C plus. OChem 1, C plus. I don't know why they put OChem 2 above, but I actually started improving and I got a B plus. And then when I came down to my biochemistry, I got an A minus. So I started off with 3 C pluses in Gen Chem and OChem and started to improve, went to B plus and A minus. That just kind of shows like when I started to get my act together as a junior. And that's really important. Obviously, I made it into med school even with C's on my resume, so it's not impossible. You guys can still do it. It is possible. So keep that in mind. Keep your chin up. The last thing I will say about grades and MCAT is as long as you're showing consistency and as long as you're showing an uptrend and general improvement, there is hope for you. And you can actually wrap that all in a bow with that MCAT score. If your MCAT score is really high, it will most of the time outweigh your GPA because it is a very good indicator of your understanding of the prerequisite material to get into med school. It's the most direct linear comparison unless you go through a post-bac program or like a master's program that is directly tied to a medical school where you go through basically a med school curriculum in 1 year to kind of warm up and show that, hey, you're capable of getting a good grade in this curriculum. I should be able to get into med school. So keep that in mind. If you get not so good grade in your bio and chem and physics classes in your undergraduate programs, there is hope for you. You can do better later on in other ways, and it'll make up for it. The next thing I'm just going to lightly touch on is work experience. I'm going to get straight to the point here. You need work experience in a hospital or emergency room, period, end of story. I don't care what anybody else tells you. You can have research, that's great. You could do extracurricular volunteer work, that's great. You want to have a well-rounded application, but at the end of the day, if you have no medical experience whatsoever, if you haven't worked as an EMT, if you haven't worked as a medical scribe, if you haven't even worked as a nurse as a previous career, if you're a non-traditional applicant, if you don't have any sort of medical experience anywhere at all, they're probably not going to look at it very long. That's all I'm saying. The reason behind this theory and this logic is because you might not know what you're getting yourself into if you've never been in the medical environment before, and med schools can see that when you are applying. Especially if you're young, this can be really hard. So my recommendation, honestly, well, do what I did. Be a medical scribe. I was a medical scribe for a year. I had over 1,000 hours in primary care and emergency room combined as a scribe. I worked in 2 different places. And I didn't do that during my undergraduate program. If I really wanted to be ahead of the ball, I would have done that. I started doing that near the end of my graduate program. And it ended up being, I think, the biggest difference maker, because not only do you get that work experience, you also get access to doctors and physicians in general who can write you those letters of recommendations that are super duper vital. Great segue into the next section. Letters of rec. Get them from your professors, get them from your committees, but at the end of the day, get a letter of rec from a doctor. Period. End of story. That is your golden ticket. If you can do 2 doctors, fantastic, amazing. That's going to set you apart. Really, these are the most important things. Medical environment, work experience, and letters of recs from physicians. If you can do it from a physician assistant, nurse, fine, but you are going into medical school, the opinion of medical doctors or doctors of osteopathic medicine are valued supremely higher compared to any other person that can write you a letter of recommendation. As long as, of course, that letter of recommendation is a good letter of recommendation. You actually did your job. The doctor likes you. So yeah, don't be bad at your job. Have the physicians like you, and they will help you out in return. It kind of sucks that that's how it is, but that's how it is. You want the best chance? I'm telling you right now, those are your best chance of getting accepted into medical school, given you have all the other parameters, all 57 million of them. As for the extracurriculars, everybody knows everything about the extracurriculars at this point. All I'm going to say is put a hobby down. Like, seriously, put an interest down in your extracurriculars. Some people do swimming, some people do dancing. I put down YouTubing. It is one of those things that makes you stand out. We always hear stand out on your applications. Everybody and their mother tries to stand out these days. So just do something that you genuinely enjoy. Put that down on your application and talk about it. It doesn't have to relate to medicine. It could just relate to who you are as a person, because these admissions committees want to see who you are as a person first and foremost, that they're trying to bring into their establishment. They want to see that you're a human being with other interests besides medicine. They don't want robots as students. I wouldn't want that. I'm going to get to the personal statement letter here in a second, because I want to spend a lot of time analyzing it. I think this is where a lot of people miss the mark. First, I'm going to touch on the interview. Let's say you submit your application, you get the interview, congratulations. Now you have to show up and not mess up the interview. And that's all it really is. I feel like a lot of people overthink this. You're invited to interview at this university, at this medical school, for a reason. They like you. They like your application. You're already on good terms with them. Think of it that way. You're already on good terms with them. Don't mess it up. Just don't. Don't say anything dumb, and don't be a robot. Really, those are the 2 biggest things. You show your personality during the interview. Please show your personality. Don't rehearse. Don't read off scripted answers. Don't do none of that, okay? Show them that you are a person with interest, with humor. Crack a smile. Make little jokes here and there that are appropriate. It's okay to do that, and you should do that, because honestly, that's how, when I was interviewing people, that's how they stood out to me, okay? Anyone can answer interview questions all day long. Everyone's brilliant. Everyone's exceptional. Everyone has 5.0 GPAs. Everyone has 537 MCAT scores. Great. I want to see who you are and how are you going to be as a person? Because first I need to see how you are as a person before I can see who you are going to be as a doctor. So that's the first thing. Number 2, answer the question. Just answer the question that the interviewers ask you. If they ask you what is the color of the sky, don't tell them about how you are amazing at reading comprehension and like nobody cares. Answer the question. Answer it in a way where you feel comfortable. Really, it really is that simple, where you feel comfortable, because when you're comfortable, your personality shines through and it gives the other side of the screen, because everyone does Zoom interviews nowadays, a good understanding of who you are. You're not trying to mold yourself into what you think they expect of you. You're just being yourself. And if they like you, they'll like you. And if you are a good person, and if you are a good candidate for medical school in general, they will like you regardless. That's what you have to keep in mind. If you really are passionate about this, and you really do enjoy this, and you go into these interviews feeling like this is really what you're meant to do, then just be yourself, because that is who is meant to do it, right? As long as you give decent logic to your answers, as long as you understand what you're talking about, you show maturity, you show responsibility. It doesn't matter what side of the coin you land on. A lot of these questions they're going to ask you are really controversial, or have like one answer's over here, one answer's over here, and you really have to choose one. Both of them can be wrong, both of them can be right. Really, nobody cares. What they're looking at is to see how you logic, how you reason your way there, and to see if you can see all sides of the coin, so to speak. So you can see the entire situation, so you can make a mature and reasonable decision and give a good answer to these moral dilemmas that they sometimes ask you about. So here is the final draft of my personal statement that I submitted to these schools. I'm gonna let you guys read this on your own. It's a little personal, of course, as all personal statements should be, but I'm just going to kind of explain my thought process behind this and what you want to do with your personal statement essay. If you guys want to read it first and then listen to me, great. If you want to listen to me first and then read it, or do both at the same time, it's up to you. What I wanted to do with my personal statement essay is to paint a picture as to why I want to become a doctor. That's what these are asking you, right? Not just why medicine, but why do you want to become a doctor? Why are you trying to get into medical school? Why is this so important to you? And you really want to paint a picture from start to finish. That's ideal if you are able to do that. And really, your personal life experiences are going to help paint this picture. You don't want to fabricate anything. You don't want to make anything up, because they'll ask you about it in your interviews and they'll verify it. And they can tell when you're making something up. So don't do that. But definitely pull from the most impactful experiences that you had, because that is really what a personal statement's all about. So I started off in my young life not understanding why my mom had this medical condition, piquing my curiosity through that. And as I went through school, I talked about these different experiences that I had, going to this volunteer work and then becoming a medical scribe and working, just kind of the transition from piquing my curiosity to pursuing it further, to realizing exactly why this was so important to me, really being reflective about it, realizing why it was so important to me, and then in the end tying it all together and saying, this is what this means to me, and this is why I want to be a doctor and nothing else. And that is the most important thing, I think, that a lot of people miss in their personal statement, is why do you want to be a doctor in this world and absolutely nothing else? You have to be full 120% full commit mode to this, and you have to show that and express that in your personal statement, because there's no better way to do that than in this section on your application. It should be the truth. Like, really, truthfully, you should be telling them that you are honestly, like, you can't imagine doing anything else, and this is why. And this is why. When people read stuff like this, they're like, okay, yeah, maybe this person really knows what they're talking about. This is why we're going to invite them to the interview and then ask them questions to really see if they're not making this up right here. That's usually like 80% of the interview, is just to get the person in front of you and be like, oh, okay, so what you wrote in your application does line up to what you're saying. Great. It's different for every single person. This is how it goes. This is what's going to get you accepted at the end of the day, not the personal statement itself. In fact, I feel like the personal statement essay is not as important as a lot of people make it out to be, even though I know I said that a lot of people miss the mark, and it's important that you don't miss the mark on it. It's also not the most important. What's the most important? Good GPA, good MCAT, a lot of work experience, and letters from physicians. Those are top of the list. This right here, though, can save your application if any of those are a little subpar. It can also break your application if any of those are stellar. That's what I think a lot of people don't realize about the personal statement essay. It's like a mini interview. It's like a mini interview. Just like how an interview is you basically not messing up. Don't mess up and you'll get in. Same thing with this. Don't mess up. Really sell it. Show them why you're here and why you're interested, and they'll invite you for the interview. Granted, if the rest of your application is good enough for them to want to invite you to the interview. And that's the suckiest part. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's a matter of a culmination of everything that you are as a person, of your academic criteria, of your extracurricular, of your work experience, of what other people see you as, if you're going to be a good person to work with, and if you're going to be a reasonable and responsible person to make a physician of the future. It's really, really hard. Applying to med school is really, really hard. Getting into med school is really, really hard. And getting through med school is hard, but it's easier than getting into med school. That is a fact. And hopefully, I could have been another one of those hundreds of videos that you guys already watched, worrying so much about getting into med school. But if you just keep at it, keep trying. It took me 4 years to do it. It took me 3 cycles to do it. So if I did it, you could do it. I mean, look at me. Look at me. If I did it, you can do it too. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, hit that like button, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss another video. And as always, make sure you guys have a wonderful day. Peace.